Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. So we're now coming towards the end of this program. We just have two qualities left to discuss: Nasiha and Ta'awun, sincere advice and working together. And for this topic on sincere advice, I'm not going to focus too much on what I've written in the book. I'd like you to read that on your own. Today's discussion is going to be more heart to heart, because honestly it is this issue of nasiha that inspired me to write this book and to prepare this video series. And on two ways, right? In two ways. Number one, this video series is nasiha to the people involved in the field of dawah. Number two, it was seeing a lack of accountability and a lack of advice in the dawah scene that led to me writing about these topics. So one of the problems that's come about in the Western English speaking dawah scene over the past 20 years is that there hasn't been any system of accountability. Everyone pretty much does their own things. Everyone pretty much focuses on their own beliefs, their own ideas, their own opinions. And there's kind of this attitude of, I'm doing Islamic work, so you shouldn't criticize me. Or this attitude of, I know better, so you have no right to criticize me. I'm not saying everyone has this attitude, but sometimes it does come across like that. And what ends up happening is, because people are not advising each other and because people are not open to advice, this created a vacuum in the dawah. There are a lot of things were said that were incorrect that went unchallenged. A lot of things were done that were incorrect that went unchallenged. And the result of this was that people were produced from this system who were highly critical of it. And in many ways, by being a community of du'at without accountability and advice, we produced our own worst enemies. We produced people whose entire personas were built around public accountability, public correction and criticism in the most extreme of manners that violate many of the principles that we covered in the series. And I'm not even blaming those people for what they have done. They were at times correct in their criticism, although they were wrong in their methodology of criticizing. Sometimes they were wrong in their criticism as well. But I really want us to think about the whole system we've created. A system of individualism, where each person just does their own things. And everyone feels like they are above criticism. This is not the Islamic way to do anything. Nasiha, sincere counsel and advice, is a built-in part of the Islamic system. At every level, from how you run a da'wah organization to how you run a country, every aspect of our lives, there should be a sense of shura wa nasiha, seeking the opinions of others and taking their advice. Even in how you run your homes and how you manage your family, that yes, in Islam, the man is the head of the household, but there should be shura and nasiha with those who live in your household, that you take their advice, you listen to their opinions before making major decisions for your family. And that seems to be missing in the da'wah today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that the affair of the believers is decided through shura, through mutual consultation between them. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ad-dinu nasiha. The religion is nasiha. The religion is sincere counsel, sincere advice, sincere well-wishing for others, to everyone, the leaders and the average Muslim. We all need advice. Each and every one of us are a work in progress. Each and every one of us have our faults. We need people with more experience than us to correct us when we are wrong. We need to be open to correction, because it's not possible on your own to go through life without making mistakes and learning from your mistakes. You need people to point out your mistakes, and you need people to show you your blind spots. In the dawah, you may find yourself messing up, maybe in your choice of words, maybe in the people you ally with, maybe in your giving in to some temptation or going astray in your intentions, or using a strategy that brings about more harm than good. A lot of this is stuff that nobody can really teach you. You learn on the spot. When things happen, you've got to figure out what's the right strategy, what's the right way forward, what should I do here, what should I say here. And you're not always going to make the right decision. That's why it's important to surround yourself with people who you can seek the advice of. To surround yourself with people who will fill in your weak spots. So this is why it's also important that the people you take advice from, that not only are they senior to you in the dawah, or maybe even equal to you in the dawah, but they also should be people who are good at things that you are not good at. So they can show you the things that you are not seeing. And this concept of having a council of advisors is the way of the Salaf. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, despite being the one who receives revelation, he would make shura with Abu Bakr and Umar and Usman and Ali. He would gather the Sahaba and seek their opinions. We know when Abu Bakr and Umar and Usman and Ali, when they were in power, they always had a council, a group of Sahaba that they would take counsel from and who would correct them if they felt that they had made a mistake. We know when Umar ibn Abdul Aziz became the Khalifa, he revived this practice. He had a council of ulama and advisors who would help him to make better decisions. We see the same with Salahuddin Ayyubi, and really any great leader in Muslim history always had people that they would take advice from. The problem today is that some of us feel we are above taking advice from others. We feel that no one has the right to criticize us because we've made sacrifices for the deen. Oh yes, we've all made sacrifices for the deen. That doesn't make us ma'asum, that doesn't make us above correction. Yes, the correction should be done in the proper way, privately, with politeness, with kind preachings, with goodwill. But we have to be open to it. If we're not open to being corrected in that way, then the corrections will come out in worse ways, because we've closed the door to being corrected in the correct way. So shaitan may trick you into thinking that you are the best in the world, and in doing so filling your heart with arrogance. When your heart becomes filled with arrogance, you close yourself off from any criticism, and this makes it easier for shaitan to lead you astray. When someone thinks that they are the best, they take every bit of criticism personally. Even when the criticism comes from a good place, even when it's done in the best of manners, they still take it personally because they have this idea of, who are you to criticize me? Yet we know that the Salaf were people who lived their lives in a way that they would seek the advice of others. And this is something that we need to revive in our times. Everybody involved in da'wah must have a circle of friends and teachers who call you out when you make a mistake, who correct you when you make a mistake, who are willing and able to give you the criticism you need to keep you grounded, to keep you in check, to keep you humble, to keep you on the straight path. Each and every one of us need to surround ourselves with people like that. And we have to be humble and willing to accept their corrections. Otherwise, they're not going to do this. If you are involved in the dawah, please ensure that you are surrounded by righteous well-wishers who are willing to correct you when you mess up. So just say perhaps one day you are delivering a lecture on Islam and you say something that you don't realize is incorrect, your friends should be able to give you a call or send you a message and tell you, listen, I heard that lecture of yours, you made a mistake here. You need to correct it. And you should be humble enough to say, Jazakallah khair, I didn't realize I made a mistake, I will correct it. And you need to be humble enough to correct it. This is part of the dawah. And this is important for us to revive in our times, because if we do not have a system of accountability, then things will get worse and worse. Now, there are two extremes people fall into today when it comes to nasiha. One is becoming so self-obsessed that you can't accept criticism from others, and the other is just turning your whole persona into criticizing others. And I really think one produced the other, right? That if we had a healthy circle of criticism and private nasiha, then there wouldn't be an opportunity for people to exist who are public and harsh and mean and exaggerating in their criticism. One problem produced the other. And I can give many examples of how, as a community of international English speaking du'at, many of us are not open to criticism, thinking that we know best. There was a da'i, and I'm not going to mention names, I'm not going to mention specific details because it's easy to figure out who I'm talking about if I do, but just to give you a couple of examples without mentioning names, there was a da'i who many years ago posted an inappropriate link on his social media. And only many years later it became a big deal publicly. And when people reached out to him privately many years later and asked him that, when you posted this link, did anyone offer you nasiha? Did anyone privately contact you and tell you that it's not appropriate for a sheikh to be sharing a link like this? He said, no, nobody told me anything. So I assumed it was fine. So here we have the first mistake. Many people had the sheikh's phone number. Many people know him personally. Many people are in such a position that if they had offered him private advice, he would have listened. But we didn't have that culture of advising each other. We just had that culture of everyone do your own thing and everyone stay out of each other's way, which is not the Islamic culture. We should be correcting each other. We should be advising each other. We should be keeping each other in check. On the opposite side, there was a famous sheikh who gathered some of his colleagues and asked them for advice. But when they actually started giving him advice, when they actually started pointing out things he was doing or saying in his dawah that were wrong, he began to defend himself at every point and never really listened to what they were saying. He became overly defensive and took their criticism personally, not realizing that firstly, he's the one who asked for advice. Number two, the advice was coming from a good place. That these were friends sitting together for a meal, offering honest, sincere advice to help him improve. And I think it's also a reflection on the times we are living in and the way people are brought up. That people today in general are oversensitive. And people today in general are oversensitive and can't stand being corrected. You know, this is especially true for people raised in the West. Many of them are brought up with such a luxury lifestyle, being pampered by their parents. Even in schools, the teachers aren't allowed to really correct them properly. And they brought them in such a soft environment that they see any criticism, any correction, any attempt to reach out and tell them that you are wrong, you need to do better, they see it as an attack on themselves. And this is not healthy. This is not good for the dawah. This is not good for them. It's not good for their own souls. If we want to be successful in this world and in the akhirah, we have to open our hearts to sincere nasiha. And again, there's two sides to this: giving the nasiha and receiving the nasiha. As for giving the nasiha, if you have a friend, someone you are in contact with, a da'i that you know personally, who said something wrong, who did something wrong, who messed up, who may be going astray, who may be falling into some misguidance, it is his right upon you that you correct him and help him get back to the straight path. It's his right upon you that you give him nasiha. But how do you do it? Making a public video in which you demonize the brother and call him all kinds of names and twist his picture to look evil and leave no room for redemption, no room for coming back, and misinterpret his words in the worst possible way, this is completely haram. This is completely outside the norms of acceptability. This is not the Islamic way of correcting people. It has never been the Islamic way of correcting people. Understand that even when a da'i or a sheikh messes up, they are still your brothers and sisters in Islam. They still have the honor of a Muslim. They still have the rights of a Muslim. You cannot mock them. You cannot degrade them. You cannot cut off their road to redemption. If you genuinely care about their souls, if you genuinely care about them returning to the path of Allah, then you will offer them advice in a way that leads to Allah, that leads to correction, that leads to improvement. If you're not doing that, then you're not really giving advice, you're just using their faults to build your own fame. That's what you're doing. You're using somebody else's faults and mistakes to build your own fame, to build your own reputation, to build your own platform. You don't really care about their improvement, you don't really care about their souls, because if you did, the first thing you'd have done is given them a call and had a one-on-one discussion with them. And I know many people who have each other's phone numbers, who know each other personally, who may even live in the same neighborhood, but they rather go public and bash the other person and completely ruin their reputation, leaving no room for redemption, than reach out to the person and speak one-on-one, man-to-man. And I call this a cowardly way of correcting people. This is a cowardly way of correcting people. If you had courage, you will meet a person face to face, speak to them man to man, and hash things out in person. Instead of hiding behind a computer and attacking people publicly because you know it's going to bring in the views on YouTube. So be very careful of this. How do you correct someone? There are levels to this. Number one, you establish a relationship with the person. You establish a relationship with the person because, let's face it, human beings are more likely to accept correction from someone who they know than from someone who they don't know. This is just human nature. Right? You may argue that, they are shaykh, they should be on a higher level. End of the day, people are human beings. You have to understand human nature. You have to work within the boundaries of understanding human nature. So people are human. They are more likely to accept correction from you if they know you, if they know that you care about them, if they know that you have goodwill for them. So establish a relationship with them. Number two, establish a relationship of mutual advice. If they correct you, you accept it. If you correct them, they accept it. Let it be mutual. Let it not be a one-way street. They should be just as able to correct you as you are to correct them. Number three, correct them in private. Reach out to them. Speak to them. Have a discussion with them. Have a conversation with them. Hear their side of the story. Maybe you think they were wrong, but their understanding of the Quran and Sunnah led them to a different conclusion from you. That's possible. In many cases, that's exactly what happens. Right? There is a lot of room for ikhtilaf, for differences of opinion in our religion, and many people don't understand this. They see someone with a different opinion from them and they immediately assume the worst, and they leave no room for any differences of opinion. It might be that what you think is a completely out there opinion, completely wrong opinion, it may actually have more proofs from the Quran and Sunnah than what you are upon. So let's hear them out. Listen to what that person has to say. Let them make their case for their position. And it's important. This is another important point. Many people today, they don't have a system of determining what needs to be corrected and what doesn't need to be corrected. Right? Because there's a principle in our religion that as long as there is room for difference of opinion on an issue, let them follow their opinion. As long as there is room for a difference of opinion on an issue, let them follow their opinion. Yet today we have people being harsh and mean and vulgar towards each other, even though the other person is promoting an opinion that is completely valid and within the bounds of Sharia, just because it's not the opinion that you follow. This is wrong. This is un-Islamic. Learn the boundaries of ikhtilaf. If you're not sure if something's a valid ikhtilaf or not, ask the ulama. They will know. They will know that, hold on, this opinion, yes, certain scholars hold it, so it's fine for him to hold it even if we disagree. Or they will say, hold on, there's ijma on this topic, there's consensus on this topic, this person is stepping into dangerous grounds with this opinion, someone should reach out to him and correct him. But not every difference means that you have to attack a person or refute a person or criticize a person or even advise a person. If it's a genuine matter of difference of opinion, whether it's in Islamic law or Islamic beliefs or even in strategy, a genuine difference of opinion on what our strategy should be in this situation, that situation, let people have their opinions. The religion is wide enough and diverse enough to allow for all of these opinions. But you are narrowing it. And this narrowing it of just to the opinions that you believe in is a very arrogant move. You are putting your own intellect, your own opinions, your own understanding of Islam above the Quran and Sunnah. And this comes from a place of arrogance, of thinking that you know best and your understanding of Islam is perfect and everybody else's understanding of Islam is flawed. That's where this comes from. So be very careful of this. When you're advising people, build a relationship with them. Make sure it's a relationship of mutual advice and correction. Speak to them privately. Hear their opinion out. If it's a valid opinion, let it be. If it's an invalid opinion, give them the proofs, correct them privately, and see what they do with it. If they are adamant after the private correction of promoting an opinion in public that is completely deviant and completely outside the fold of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, then refute that opinion publicly without dragging the person into it. The only time I would advise mentioning the person by name is if that person themselves have become the fitna. If that person themselves have become the problem. And this is what happens on the other side. When people are not open to correction, there is a danger that such people will continue to praise themselves and be caught up in self-amazement and grow in their arrogance and grow in their self-indulgence to a level where they will begin to think of themselves as the most important person in the world. And if you look at the history in our religion of people who claim to be false prophets, they claim to be prophets, they were false prophets, people who claim to be the Mahdi, people who started new deviant sects, people who thought of themselves as the one who was sent to revive or reform the religion. It always starts, not always, but very often it starts from a person who thinks they are above correction. And so they cut themselves off from the ulama. They cut themselves off from the rest of the du'at and the scholarly community, and they become obsessed with their own opinions. They become obsessed with their own ideas. They begin to think they are the most intelligent person in the world, the most person who understands the religion most in the world. Shaitan comes to them from that door, and before you know it, that person's claiming to be the Mahdi. They're claiming to have their own understanding of Islam, a better understanding of Islam than anyone else, or they may even start their own religion. Go back and study the biographies of people who became Dajjals, who became false prophets and false Mahdis. And you will find that many of them started from this position of refusing to accept correction and self-amazement, thinking that they are the most important person and the most intelligent person in the ummah. Be careful of this. So yes, if somebody is reaching that level, if someone is calling to themselves, if somebody is now starting their own sect, starting their own understanding of Islam, rejecting the consensus of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, starting something new altogether, and you tried speaking to them privately, you tried correcting them, you tried addressing the points that they raise, but they are becoming a fitna in of themselves, then maybe in that situation, it would be fine to call them out by name publicly and to criticize them. Because now they have become the fitna. It's no longer a wrong opinion, it's now a whole new deviation. Allah knows best. But 90% of the time, corrections, advice, nasiha should be given privately. It should be done in a civilized way. It should be done with complete adab. You should hear the other person out, listen to their point of view, try to understand where they're coming from. There should be mutual goodwill between the brothers involved or the sisters involved. And it should be towards the goal of everyone returning to the sunnah, not towards the goal of I'm better than you or my understanding of Islam is better than yours. Rather, the goal should always be how can both sides find a way to get back to Allah, to get back to the straight path. That perhaps they are on one extreme and you are on the other extreme. Maybe the balance is in the middle. Maybe you're both wrong. Maybe you're both right. But you can't know unless you actually sit down together and talk these things through, which is something that many people don't do. Many people don't do. Imam Ash-Shafi'i, rahimahullah, said, whoever advises his brother in private is sincere towards him and protecting his reputation. And whoever criticizes people publicly only wants to humiliate them and betray them. And Fudail ibn Iyad said that admiring people is part of Iman and jealousy is part of hypocrisy. A believer admires the other believers and he's not jealous of them. The hypocrite is jealous and does not admire. He said the believer overlooks the faults of others, advises them privately and gives them good advice. But the hypocrite wants to disgrace them and insult them and betray them. So if you are involved in correcting others, ask yourself, are you advising and overlooking faults and helping people to become the best versions of themselves? Or are you insulting and trying to disgrace people and trying to ruin people's reputations? Think very carefully about this. And the other side of the story, each and every one of us must be open to criticism. And I will say this, even if the criticism comes in the wrong form, even if the criticism comes in the harshest, most despicable of forms. For example, I said the critic must do things privately, they must do things the right way, but just say that they don't. Just say that somebody makes a video against you. Just say somebody writes a PDF refutation of you. Just say somebody went and spoke bad about you on social media. What should be your response? Don't cry. Don't say they're hurting my feelings. Don't say why they're being mean to me. No, man up. Man up. Control your emotions. Read what they wrote or listen to what they are saying. And listen with an open mind, an open heart, with sincerity, and ask yourself, do they have a point? Regardless of how vulgar the wording is, regardless of how harsh it is, regardless of how many violations of Islam they have made in criticizing you, your job should be that you want to be the best version of yourself. So if there's even a single bit of truth in what they are saying, you want to hear it out and you want to correct yourself. So when somebody criticizes you, when somebody advises you, even in the worst of ways, you should pay careful attention to what they are saying and ask yourself, do they have a point? Because it could be in a 30-minute video criticizing you, 25 minutes is complete bakwas, complete nonsense, lies, slander, whatever. But at other 5 minutes they have a point. You want to pay attention to that. You want to improve, you want to repent, you want to change. Because it's not about them and you, it's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I will say this much, every single one of us must be open to criticism and advice, even if it comes in the wrong way. That is their sin, someone needs to advise them on that. Your job is, hold on, I don't want to be saying anything that's wrong, I don't want to be doing anything that's wrong. Let me see what this person said and see if they have a point. Let me read what they wrote against me, or listen to what they said against me, and see if they have a point. If they have a point, I will repent, I will change, I will improve, because I want to please Allah. That should be our attitude. And when those who we have a close relationship with, who love us for the sake of Allah, who work with us in the dawah, who we know personally, when they send you a private voice note, when they send you a private message, a private email, correcting you for your mistakes, don't be offended, don't be angry, don't break the friendship. Take this in goodwill. Take this as a sign that that person genuinely cares about your soul. They genuinely care about you having the correct understanding of Islam. They genuinely care about your akhirah. That's why they've taken the time to correct you privately. Be thankful to Allah for that, be thankful to them for that. And then listen to what they are saying with an open mind. If needed, meet with them. Sit together, discuss your differences, and figure out a way forward together. For the dawah to succeed today, we have to revive the art of nasiha. This means, on one hand, we all need to be open to correction and humble enough to admit when we are wrong and to improve. On the other hand, it means advising people with good manners in the best of ways, privately, protecting their reputation, protecting their honor as believers, doing it for the sake of Allah and for the sake of the dawah, not for the sake of ego, not for the sake of fame, but doing it to genuinely help your brother find their way back to the straight path. And if we approach nasiha, sincerely advising and receiving advice from a perspective of Islamic brotherhood, and we do it in the right way, we give it in the right way, and we receive it in the right way, then inshallah we will see a lot of improvement in the da'wah. And there will be no room for people to be publicly correcting you in the most vulgar of ways, because your friends already corrected you privately and you fixed the mistakes privately. But if we don't allow people to correct us, if we leave no way for anyone to tell us anything because our feelings get hurt so easily, then we are making it easy for our enemies to go out and attack us in public. And I'll end on one last note. As someone involved in dawah, you need to have a thick skin. You need to have a thick skin. You cannot have your feelings hurt easily. If you are someone whose feelings get hurt easily, then this is not the work for you. This is not the field for you. I'm sorry, but the dawah is not a field for someone who is fragile in their ego, whose feelings get hurt when someone corrects them or tells them they are wrong. This is not the place for you. Learn how to have a thick skin. Learn how to look beyond the emotions and to pay attention to what the person is saying and to correct yourself. Learn to humble yourself. Learn to be someone who is open to feedback and not someone who is emotional and gets their feelings hurt with the slightest correction. That's not befitting the da'i, that's not befitting the believer, that's not befitting a man. That's just completely not the way a Muslim should handle feedback. So please don't be a snowflake. Don't be someone who is so easily hurt and so easily offended that people are scared to correct you, and so wrong things that you said or wrote stay published on the internet for life because everyone's too scared of hurting your feelings. This is bad for the dawah. This is bad for the deen, and this is bad for your soul. As Muslims, we should always be open to correction. And that means being tough enough to listen to people tell us we are wrong without getting our feelings hurt. And if we can't do that, then really this is not the field for you to be in. So simply put, principle number 12 of da'wah is nasiha. Give it in the proper manner, be open to receiving it. If we do these two things, we will go very far in this field. Jazakallah khairan wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.